Hey guys, welcome to the video. This video is part 3 in our series on budgeting, and it will help you go all the way from creating that initial budget to paying off your debt to building up your savings accounts. Getting our finances under control is the best decision my husband and I ever made, and through this series I'm showing you all of the steps we took to make that happen. And if we could do it with the income that we had when we paid off our debt and built up our savings accounts, anyone can do it. If you guys would like to hear more details about our story, and maybe I could even see if Ross would come on the channel and talk with me about that, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if you would like kind of a full overview of a story, and if you would like to meet him and talk with him about the budgeting. He is really good at this stuff. Either way, if you guys would like a video about this or not, I will put in the description down below some blog posts that talk more about our story with how we approach paying off debt and why we decided to do this. So you can check those out if you're interested. If you are ready to completely figure out your budget, I have a free budgeting checklist that I will link in the description down below. And that checklist will have every single step that we are going to go through in these videos, so you can keep track and build your budget right alongside me. If you're new here, I'm Kassy, and my goal is to help you get 7 extra hours in your week. So if that sounds like something you would be into, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell next to it so you'll be notified when the next video comes out. All right, let's get to the video. Today we are going to be looking at what flexible expenses and fixed expenses are and how you can lower some of those flexible expenses. So if you are using the workbook, grab out the fixed expenses versus flexible expenses worksheet. And if you're just using a regular notebook, you could honestly do 2 pages, one for the fixed expenses and one for the flexible expenses. So after the last video, hopefully you were able to fill in all of your monthly expenses, and you can find those in that monthly expense calculator or hopefully in your dedicated budgeting notebook. And what you're going to do is you're going to just go down, and each expense you're going to put in one column or one page or the other. So you're going to decide, is this a fixed expense or is this a flexible expense? And let's just go through, I may not do all of them, but let's go through and talk about some examples. So the first thing I see on here is mortgage or rent. Now, for most people, that's a fixed expense. Technically, it is flexible. You can move if your mortgage or rent is too high, but that's more of a long-term fix, not a short-term one. So let's go ahead and put that as fixed for now, unless you plan on moving in the near future. Same with water, electric, gas, garbage. Unless you live in a really big town and have a lot of options, those are generally fairly fixed. But also under the home expenses, I see the renters or homeowners insurance. Now, this is actually an area that you can save quite a bit of money if you are willing to put in a little bit of effort. And we actually had a situation where we were looking at our budget and we just thought, man, this seems pretty high for insurance, because insurance kind of like to just turn up a little bit every year how much you are paying them, and you don't really realize it until all of a sudden you're paying way more than you ever were before. So I took probably the next 2 weeks, maybe it was 3 weeks, the nap times. Whenever my kids were sleeping, I would call insurance companies, and I had the policy with me so I could go over and tell them all of the areas of coverage that we were getting and ask them for a quote for what would be comparable with them. And after doing this for a couple of weeks, and then once I kind of narrowed it down to 2 or 3, my husband went over the quotes with me, and we were able to save a significant amount of money just by changing insurances. So that's definitely an area that you can write down as a flexible expense and potentially lower that cost. Food expenses. Now, again, this may seem like a fixed expense. It may be really hard to lower your grocery budget, but I have noticed for us, shopping at different grocery stores can definitely save you money or cause you to spend way more money. So look around, see if there are more budget-friendly grocery stores. I know in some areas, Aldi is really great. We don't have an Aldi near us, but we have a store called Winco, and it is so much cheaper. A lot of times at these places, you do have to use a debit card instead of a credit card, but I don't mind if I can save hundreds of dollars over a year. When we lived in the Midwest, there was a store called Super Saver, and that was way cheaper than the other options in the area. So you can put this as a fixed expense if you feel you are already shopping at the cheapest store in your area, but you may put it down as a flexible one and just try it out. Try going to a different grocery store and see if you can save some money. Whatever you had for going out to eat could definitely be a flexible expense. That is definitely one that could be lowered if you need your expenses to go down. Coffee and drinks is another easy way to lower expenses. Then there are vehicle expenses. Now, kind of like with the home expenses, most of those are fairly set unless you are looking for a vehicle at the time that you are doing your budget, in which case I definitely recommend buying a car you can afford. And that would definitely help with your payments and expenses and all of that stuff. But if you already have a vehicle, your car and your gas are pretty much fixed expenses, unless you could go somewhere cheaper for gas. But you do need car insurance as well. And we found it was cheaper to move our car insurance and our homeowner's insurance together and have that bundled. And that made it even cheaper for us with the insurance. Then communication expenses. Again, a lot of people see this as a non-negotiable and they can't do anything about it, but there are a lot of things that you can do to lower your internet bill or lower your cell phone bill or things like that. So it's your choice. Obviously, if you don't want to mess with it, you can put these in fixed. But if you're willing to make some phone calls and potentially change carriers or change internet providers, there are definitely things you can do to decrease that cost. Now, again, I'm not going to go through every single thing on the expenses. You can do that and put them on which either column of this sheet makes sense or which either page. But I did want to mention the entertainment expenses. Pretty much this whole category can go on your flexible expenses. You don't have to have Amazon Prime or Netflix or Hulu or things like that. And you can either cancel those and find other things to do with your time, or you can call them and they will often have promotions for people that are just joining. So if you call and tell these places that you're going to cancel, they will say, well, what if we give you this deal that we give our new people right now? And my husband has actually done this several times with internet also. He will call and say, I'm going to cancel, I'm going to go to a different provider, and they will give him a deal for a year to be able to keep us on for another year. And then my husband writes on his calendar to check back with them in a year and make sure that the prices aren't going to go up. So then once you have all of your flexible expenses figured out, you can take everything in the flexible expenses column and transfer it right over to this worksheet or a new piece of paper if you're using a notebook. And this is for decreasing your flexible expenses. So you'll want to write down the flexible expenses in the first column and then write down the current cost that you are paying for everything. And this will just make it easy when you are making those phone calls to insurance companies, internet, Amazon, anybody else. You know exactly what you're paying. So when they tell you what your new cost would be, you can easily compare and see if that would be any better and if you should pursue it or not. And then write down in this column, once you have things figured out, what your new cost will be. And then you can do the math, subtract the new cost from the old cost, and figure out what your monthly savings will be. Then once you do this, I recommend either printing off again the monthly expenses calculator or getting a new sheet of paper if you're using a notebook and rewrite in all of your expenses with the new amounts. And this will just make sure as you are building out your budget that everything is accurate and you are accounting for every penny properly. So that is all for this video. In the next video, we are going to look at charity and if you should include donating for charity in your budget, and if you should do that now or if you should do that once you have your finances more under control with debt paid off and savings accounts built up. So be sure to subscribe down below if you want to catch that video. Also, keep letting me know in the comments, guys, if you think a budgeting bootcamp would be helpful to set up all of this stuff and be able to ask questions in live coaching calls and things like that. Let me know in the comments if that sounds like something you guys would be interested in or if that's a terrible idea and we should never do that. As always, I'm Kassy with makingtimeforgiggles.com and I make videos all about how to simplify your life. So be sure to subscribe, like this video if it was helpful, and I will see you on the next one.